We're back, people. Another Miami Dolphins stream, training camp day 11. Go over some of the news that was reported, review that type of stuff, and then also just a lot of things I feel like have happened in the past couple of days that we didn't get a chance to talk about. You know, the Zach Sieler extension, Teron Armstead. I recommend checking out. He went live yesterday and has a video on his channel. Had a lot of interesting insights. So we'll talk about a couple of things he said. But yeah, I really recommend checking that out. Getting into like the nitty gritty detail, and then we'll go over the notes and some interesting quotes that came from yesterday as well that I think are kind of telling with where maybe some players are at in other interesting things. So I think starting with first, just Zach Sieler extension, not too much to say. You know, he got a 3-year extension worth up to $67.75 million with $44 million guaranteed. So they have him locked up through the 2029 season. So like he's got 5 years on his deal now. I think looks on paper, just like first glance, they haven't had all the details come out yet. But with 44 million guaranteed, with we've heard some details like 34 of that 44 million is in the first 2 years. It seems pretty team friendly, and also like Sieler deserves all of that. So I'm excited to see what the details are specifically. But like at first glance, it seems like a pretty good contract for the team as well. But yeah, just talking about Sieler, one of the best defensive linemen in the league, one of the just most underappreciated players. Like it's still surprising to me that like I talk to people like that are fans of other team and they've just never heard of Sieler. He's like that one guy on the team that just kind of flies under the radar. It's kind of crazy. What's up, Jeb? But yeah, shout out Zach Sieler. Definitely deserved. Very happy for him. Glad that he's going to be around for a long time. You know, especially over the next few seasons. Some other interesting notes that I think came from yesterday were interviewed Anthony Weaver. Anthony Weaver got interviewed yesterday, and they asked him about the corner position. And I think listening to Weaver interviews are very important because when he says names, like you got to pay attention to the names that he says, because whenever he said names in the past, those are the guys that typically end up like starting, playing, making the team. Those are the guys he really likes. So when they asked him, and the reporters didn't bring up a name, Weaver brought them up himself, which is big. He said Storm Duck, Ethan Bonner, and Kendall Sheffield. I think Kendall Sheffield, and from other reports we see Kendall Sheffield's been like actually doing a lot of work with the ones. I don't necessarily love that, but I do think it's important to say like, hey, Kendall Sheffield's probably making the team, and there's a chance that he sees playing time. That's not great. Storm Duck, I think, is locked in. Apparently, he had another strong practice. Like, I think Duck is probably the most locked-in starter on the roster, really, at corner. They love him. He had another strong day. But it's also nice that he mentioned Ethan Bonner's name. I don't think, Bonner will be one of the starters, but I am hoping he's definitely one on the team that could definitely be a part of the rotation at some point in this season. Another thing Weaver said was also, he mentioned all 4 of his top safeties have nickel experience, which I think is a tell of wanting to run more 3 safety sets. It also helps with like the coverage rotational stuff that they like to do. But with the 3 safety sets, having safeties that can work nickel could allow like certain, like, so you don't always have to run 3 corners on the field. Even though Mike Hilton's a good nickel, it allows for different situations, especially with like the safeties being more big nickels, maybe more matchups that, maybe Hilton's not the ideal nickel corner to have. It just makes you a little more versatile. But yeah, what's up, guys? Sieler has more tackles for loss than tackles in. Yeah. He's the only D tackle with like 10 plus sacks the last years. Yeah. Definitely one of the guys you want to see around here. What's going on, bro? I'm still thinking we need another CB, man. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they sign one. I think they're probably being a little patient. But I also wouldn't mind if they just stuck with the young guys and see what they got, because I think the young guy stepping up is like best case scenario rather than like signing a veteran who's going to be like just okay for you. But it's, not a guaranteed either way. Austin Clark talked about Kenneth Grant, talked about like how hard of a worker he is, how smart he is, which I think is a key point of emphasis for Miami with a lot of the guys that they brought in. Another interesting note that I saw is Brewer last year, Dolphin center, obviously, he only allowed pressure on 2.2% of pass plays, which ranked 5th among centers. And I always thought that was an interesting note because coming to Miami, everyone was so worried about his pass protection because it was a weakness in Tennessee. that just shows like how big this system is and how like helpful it can be to maybe guys that have some issues in pass pro, because it like really turned around Brewer's game, and then he's also just like a great fit as a run blocker here and in like the screen game and stuff like that. Some other interesting notes, but I think we can get to some of the. I'll get to some of the other quotes later, but I want to get into the notes from day 11 because I think that's what we're all interested in. Shout out Travis Wingfield. A lot of this stuff comes from him, but first we'll talk about. Apparently, there was a pretty deep ball heavy day. They definitely took some deep shots. This was from everyone. I saw all the beat reporters talk about this. They hit two of them, and Tua hit two of them and missed two of them. One of the ones he hit was to Tyreek, but the two that he missed were also to Tyreek. So hopefully they can kind of build that up. I mean, you're going to have misses on deep ball. It's the lowest percentage throw, in the NFL. Hitting 50% isn't that bad, but that is something the Dolphins have to be better at this season. Hitting more big plays again, more like the 2022-2023 season. And the other one was a 50-yard strike to Malik Washington, which I love to hear. I'm a big Malik Washington fan. And for a guy who's not going to be necessarily a big deep threat in the offense, if he can, add that sort of repertoire to his game. He beat Kendall Sheffield, and like Sheffield apparently was in good coverage, but it was just like a perfect pass. Just one of those situations where like there's nothing you can do. At least that was what Travis was saying. But like seeing Malik making some big plays. Easily one of my favorite players on the team that I'm rooting for in this upcoming season. But yeah, the other one, the two misses, he was a little long to Tyreek on one and short to Tyreek on another one. Another interesting connection that Wingfield brought up was Ewers hit Theo Weiss on a 25-yard touchdown on like a nice double move. He beat Isaiah Johnson, and this was in team drills. That seems like that's been one of the biggest connections of camp. Is Ewers hitting Weiss. Very excited to see that in preseason. I think if that connection builds, like that gives Weiss a really good chance of making the roster, because we know how important preseason is to like really like fighting out for those final spots. And if a quarterback prefers you over another receiver, sometimes that can be all the difference. And Weiss is someone that they gave a pretty good guaranteed contract to out of the UDFA group. He's a very, if you watch his college film, he's not like the most explosive athlete, but he was very nuanced and like understood like the details of the game, which could make, you very well liked by the coach. He's also, pretty big. He's got like that good sizing, be a red zone threat, pretty good toughness. And, if him and Ewers kind of build that, that'll be kind of interesting to see, especially once preseason rolls around. The Palm Beach Post also reported that, Elijah Campbell was in a red non-contact jersey, but he's practicing. Melifanu was working back, did some work on the side with the trainers. Jason Marshall was working on the side with trainers. Jalen Phillips returned. Cam Smith did not practice. So that's sort of what continued. Couple touchdowns. Zach Wilson threw like a touchdown to Eskridge. Down in some red zone stuff. And then, there was multiple reports that Storm Duck had like a really strong day. I think Wingfield said it. I saw a few other the beat reporters say it, that, he was on Waddle throughout the day, and like he was going one-on-one with Waddle and like holding his own. Like that is such a tough battle in practice. And this also kind of goes back to I talked about Armstead earlier. Armstead talked about the guys that impressed him the most. And one of the guys like he clearly was highest on was Storm Duck. Like he said, not only is Storm Duck a starter, but like he's going to be a starter in the league for many years. And like he was really excited about Duck. He talked about like how competitive he was, and just like a lot of the details he went into about just the entire team being like more locked in. Like he talked about how like locked into it was, how detail oriented everything was, and it seemed like it was the most locked in he had seen. But yeah. Also like the front seven is going to be a big part of the team. Like the front seven creating pressure with just 4. It is probably the biggest factor for the defense going into this season. Do we believe that Zach Wilson Cures are better than Skylar and Huntley or White? Yes, especially for the system, I think. Another interesting quote from yesterday was from, I think it was Bevel, right? I don't know, it might have been Slowick. It was either Bevel or Slowick. But I think they were both interviewed yesterday, but they both kind of talked about them. And they talked about like bringing in Zach, of like, they think they could potentially bring Zach's game to another level, similarly how they took Tua's game to another level when they came in. And they also like Slowick talked about how like they use Tua's film with anticipation to teach the other QBs. Like, because playing with like that level of foresight, like it's like there's like a mathematical element to it. It's more than just like guessing, like some people will talk about. But like showing the tape to Zach and Quinn is like a huge help to them. And like Ewers is someone who's already pretty good at like throwing with anticipation, but like Tua's a different level. If there's one thing in the NFL that like Tua does at the highest level, it is anticipatory throws. You watch all the high level anticipation QBs, Tua is right at the top and doing it at a more constant pace than pretty much anyone. So hopefully that like can be translated to Zach Wilson and Quinn Ewers' game. But those are kind of the notes we're taken from. Another thing was it was another dominant day from Chop Robinson. He had multiple sacks, like quick wins as well apparently. I saw Travis talk about it. I saw the Palm Beach Post report about it. I think a couple other people talking about how like dominant Chop Robinson was today. And he's easily one of the players I'm highest on going into the season. Chop was very good in the second half of last season. One of the most productive edge rushers in the league in the second half of last year. The way he was winning, and I think just this year, second season, more comfortable, full season of doing that stuff. Having better players opposite of him, like Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, to maybe help him because he was getting double teamed quite a bit throughout the second half of the season. I feel really strongly about Chop. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this year, like going into next year, if like Dolphins fan look at Chop as like the best player on the team. Like that wouldn't surprise me. Like that's how highly I feel about Chop. Like that first season was really impressive in my opinion. But yeah, I'm excited for Chop. Honestly, I like Storm Duck. I've always been a fan of Storm Duck, especially as UDFA. Like I think when you're a UDFA and you get a chance to play in your first season and like clearly compete, like he wasn't perfect. That was never going to be the case. But like hearing Armstead even talk about Duck got me even extra excited, and especially him doing a lot of one-on-ones with Tyreek and Waddle, and that's where I feel most comfortable with him. I think in press man one-on-one, I actually think that's where he's at his best. Like that's what he showed in preseason. If you go back to his Raiders film last year, versus the Raiders, they actually asked him to play more press man, and he looked very comfortable in that game going against a couple of different guys. And it just seems like his film's growing. He's also like a good athlete, competitive, which is things you want out of your corners. He looks like he's in better shape as well from like the pics we've seen of him. I think Duck is someone that's probably gonna have a pretty strong year. It'd probably be the most likely of the corner group to step up because he also is going to get the quickest opportunity because he'll start right away on the outside. If you're going against the Dolphins, what's your strategy for dealing with the Dolphins pass rush? I mean, it's more so like you actually would, I think to deal with the Dolphins pass rush, like your game plan would actually be what the Dolphins offense tries to game plan. You have to be able to run the ball successfully. So that's why I think adding guys like Kenneth Grant that can eat up double teams. Like even Weaver talked about it a while ago. He talked about the requisite girth up front because a lot of teams are playing too high. The Dolphins will line up in too high looks a lot as well. So you have to be able to stop the run with light boxes. So stopping the run will be very key for Miami. I think they will probably start up. This happens every year where the Dolphins like start off the season slow versus the run. They're not the greatest. And then after a few games, they're actually a pretty good run defense. And I think that will probably be similar to this season. I wouldn't be surprised. A pretty good run defense for the most part. But I think adding guys like Kenneth Grant, Zach Sieler up front, Jordan Phillips, Benito Jones, who Anthony Weaver praised the front seven yesterday and praised Benito Jones and how helpful he was to the young guys. Being able to stop the run will be huge because you have to put yourself into situations where like it's an obvious pass where your pass rushers can get after the quarterback. Third and longs, second and longs, allow your guys to pin those ears back, get after the QBs. So basically teams would have to, go up to strategy like the Shanahan style systems where you're running the ball. It's third and shorts. You're getting the ball out quickly. That's how you sort of mitigate the pass rush. It's not even necessarily about like double teams and stuff because you can't double team everybody. You can definitely give help to certain guys, but it's more about staying ahead. That would be how I think the Dolphins defense would struggle is if they are not stopping the run. Yeah. And a lot of the DBs have been interviewed recently. Like I think McMorris got interviewed today, and like the other days they talked about like how helpful some of the veterans are and like teaching them things. Another interesting nugget. We haven't heard much about Patrick McMorris, but I believe Wingfield talked about McMorris and Elijah Campbell today, and said that they had good practices, especially playing the run and like playing their like short game zone drops. McMorris is one I'm very excited to see in preseason because we saw how effective he could be in preseason last year. So I'm excited to see him get some action because I think like McMorris, Trader, these preseason games will be very important, especially Trader because he hasn't even practiced really yet. And I know he was expected back around joint practices, and joint practices should be in, joint practices are in like a few days. So hopefully we'll get Trader back. Where else are we at? He said there was a red zone period where all the 3 QBs had to throw away / eat multiple plays. So the defensive staff had people playing good within their rules. He said Achane keeps getting better as a route runner. I mean, if that's the case, then watch out for Achane because he's already one of the best receivers, like receiving backs in the league. Like I think he might be the best receiving backs in the league. Like if there's certain areas, like there's not a lot of like players where you're like, this guy is for sure the best in the league, but there's certain areas the Dolphins have where I'm like, the Dolphins have the best player in the league at this certain area, or like arguably the best. Like Achane as a receiving back is arguably the best receiving back. Like Tua, we talked about earlier, Tua is arguably the best anticipator. But like overall, it's tough. Like, they used to have that in Tyreek. I think Tyreek, they just announced where he was ranked in the top 100. He was like 47 or something. He used to be like arguably the best receiver in the league. He's still up there, but he's not that anymore. Then you have some other things, like you could argue Chop has one of the best first steps, stuff like that. He also talked about Jalen Wright had a pair of touchdowns and runs in the 10 to 12 yard range. Really nice vertical acceleration. It seems like that's where Wright's been thriving, down in the red zone stuff. Like he's had a lot of red zone touchdowns. And even McDaniel hinted at that, like Wright was getting a lot of red zone work after the Tyreek comments about the short yardage stuff. Wouldn't be surprised to see Wright get a lot of short yardage work because I know we'll talk about a lot about Madison and Ollie Gordon. I'm sure they will also get short yardage work, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Jalen Wright, who is also got decent size, but also has the athleticism to I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being like the ideal back in short yardage situations because it's not as predictable. Like if you bring Madison in or Ollie Gordon in, you might be predictable that you're trying to run down the middle. If Jalen Wright is in, you kind of still have the playbook open to still run down the middle because he's big enough to do that stuff and has a good feel for that stuff. But also you could still run to the outside or, still do some pass game work. It might make you the most versatile in short yardage. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up actually being pretty effective there. Because when Achane's in, it's also a little predictable, but in the opposite way. And then you can try to go up the middle with him, but it's more likely to be stuffed. But I do think the best situation for short yards to be better is not necessarily on the running backs. I think it's more on, offensive lines, tight ends, fullback. Dolphins did sign someone. Oh yeah, there was another unfortunate, the Jalen Conyers. I don't know if you guys saw, but Jalen Conyers got put on IR, so he's out for season. They basically are stashing Conyers on IR. They brought in Chris Myrick, who's just a camp body. He was actually on the Miami Dolphins in the past. But yeah, that sucks. Conyers was one of my favorite UDFAs. It sucks that we were never got a chance. Local reporters have been negative on Wright camp so far. I've seen mixed. I feel like I've seen a lot of people in my chat have said negative, but I've read pretty much everything. And I feel like most of the time it's either not mentioned. I think there's been a couple fumbles. That's been the negative. He's had a couple fumbles, but outside of that, he's had actually some pretty good explosive runs and finished in red zone. I'm actually still pretty confident in Jalen Wright. Also, I think running back, there's certain positions that I think are really hard to show off in camp, and I think it's more so you'll see live action in game, the true side of these players. And I think running back's one of those positions where I don't put it as much stock into training camp as the other stuff. Tanner Connor apparently caught another handful of passes. Honestly, with Conyers out and with Ingold hurt, Tanner Connor has a very good shot at making this team. And honestly, wouldn't be surprised if he saw playing time, especially with Waller hasn't worked yet. So Connor's got a lot of work with the first team. And he's one of the only guys on the roster that has fullback experience in the offense. So I wouldn't be surprised if, Connor actually finally gets a chance to see work in the starting O, but will he actually take advantage of it? I mean, that remains to be seen. I'm not super high on that, but also Zach Sieler had the orange jersey today. Apparently, he kept on dominating. Shout out to Zach Sieler. Jordan's he talked about Phillips' power being undeniable every few reps. Like he says, like when the technique is just right, it's like his knockback's really good. He said he saw Jonah jumps at him and give him a good displacement strike. That's been a fun battle to watch. Jonah, I think Armstead talked about Jonah yesterday in his thing, saying like he likes how he works. He says he has the right mentality. He said there's still some things he's working on, like there's going to be some growing pains, which I agree with. I think based on Jonah's film, there will be some growing pains. But I do still think he'll be an upgrade over what we had last year at guard, and he'll have like an overall solid season for a rookie. Like some ups, some downs, but overall like pretty solid. Did you see that Will Johnson is already CB1? He's doing great. Wish we had him. Yeah, so I do. Actually, I want to talk about the Will Johnson thing. I was a big Will Johnson fan in the draft. I would have taken Will Johnson at 13 if the medicals checked out. But we have to remember that Will Johnson, the reason he fell is because, at least from what the reports say, it was because of how his knee would affect him long term. They thought like he might not play past 5 years. So, like, it's not surprising that he's playing well. It's just, I would not overreact to that because, like, Will Johnson is projected to not have a long career. And we've seen how Dolphins can get. If Will Johnson came to Miami and got hurt, there would be pitchforks, you know? Because of how the Dolphins have drafted injured players in the past. So I feel like there's a little bit of revisionist history going on. I've seen people talking about Will Johnson. The reason he fell is because of his long-term outlook. Like, short-term, yeah, he's going to be good. But I'm not mad that they missed out on him because I think they also got two good players. I would have, like, if they took Will Johnson in a second, like, I would have still been, like, happy about it because I think he's really good. But I don't think it's as big of a deal as I've seen people maybe make it out to be on social media because of the potential long-term effects that it could have. I think the tune about it will be probably different in a few years. What do you have to say about our new tight end? Myrick, he's just a camp body. He's a camp body. The tight ends will be Waller, Pharaoh Brown, Julian Hill, and then maybe Tanner Connor if they keep 4. Then we got... Where else we at? He said that he saw 3 downhill runs that went for 5 yards with good line of scrimmage displacement behind Jonah, Brew, and James. I also think I saw today wasn't padded, by the way, so keep that in mind. I think they went to a non-padded. And then tomorrow's practice is back to, like, fans should be there, so we'll get probably more details, probably more videos. Grayson Murphy continues to make plays. He had a sack on Tua in low red zone with a speed move on Larry Borum. He was also had some pressures on Zach Wilson and then finished the day with a sack on Quinn Ewers. Shout out Grayson Murphy, one of the players I'm most excited to see in this preseason because he only played in 1 preseason game last year and it was only like half the game. And then he was out for the year. And he's had a really strong camp. He was a guy I really liked coming out of college. I thought he was our best UDFA last year in terms of just like talent. And so I'm really excited to see him. And I think he has a good shot of making the team. Like a legit shot for a second year UDFA that didn't really play it all year 1. It's pretty rare for those guys to make the roster. So I think he has a good chance. He's a guy I'm a fan of. It'll be interesting to see. The back end of the edge room is pretty interesting. He plays fullback. Yeah, he'll be like because Ingold's in concussion protocol, so I don't imagine he's going to be out like long term. Yeah, Myrick might get some fullback work in preseason, but yeah, I guess he could make the team if Ingold is out long term and he was like your only fullback, but I don't know. He hasn't played legitimate NFL snaps since like 2022, so I don't really have much to say about Myrick, just where he's at. Where else were we? Apparently Mo Kamara had a run stuff and a sack. He thought it was Kamara's best day. Kamara and Murphy is a battle, I think, at camp that's happening, you know, because you have your 3 edges. You have Quentin Bell. They're also kind of fighting Quentin Bell. But there's a world where they only end up keeping 4 because they could consider Willie Gay as like a tweener type. Usually they keep 5. It just depends on where they want to keep like extra bodies at. But Kamara and Grayson Murphy are kind of fighting for spots. will be interesting to see how that plays out. I liked both of them coming out of college. It seems like Grayson has kind of been farther ahead in camp, but preseason can kind of change everything. So we'll see how that plays out. Derek McClendon apparently also had 2 sacks. He's also been kind of productive as a name. He doesn't have much film on him, so like I don't really have thoughts as of yet, maybe without seeing him play much. But I have seen his name pop up every few days with him getting sacks. Those are all the notes from Travis. Shout out Travis. Saw some other people mention some players. And where else are we? This was a quote yesterday from Joe Barry, who's the Dolphins linebacker coach. They asked him yesterday who the starters were. And he said, even though Willie Gay has had really great camp, Tyrell Dodson is the starter, which I have kind of said, like, Willie Gay is probably going to be a rotational guy because he's not like a full-time true off-ball linebacker. He's more of that tweener that you move around in a rotational role to really get the best out of him, and you put him on the field in certain situations. But Dodson probably makes more sense as your starter, but they'll rotate in now. I think they'll both play. I did make a video yesterday. It is members only. I'll probably post it at some point throughout this week where I talked about like the training camps standouts and like will that their play in training camps translate into the regular season? Will they continue that success? Willie Gay was one of the players I talked about, and I do think like he will have a solid season for Miami. Not as dominant as training camp, but I think he will be productive, but it might be in a rotational role. And with what Barry said, it seems like Tyrell Dodson is the starter next to Brooks. But I think all three will play. Also, the players that Armstead had mentioned yesterday, check out the Armstead video, and it's very good. But the players he mentioned yesterday that he said impressed him in the training camp practice he was at were Patrick Paul, Chop Robinson, Storm Duck, Kenneth Grant, Cameron Good, Andrew Meyer. He was super high on Andrew Meyer. He said Andrew Meyer is a starter in this league. He's just not a starter in Miami because of Brewer. Malik Washington, Ollie Gordon. Seems like seems like Meyer has had a very good effect. He was clearly someone Miami was high on last year. They kept him on the roster all year as a backup. He never even played a snap, but still kept him on the roster. They literally like him. I think he's a really good fit in the system, like really athletic. It seems like he's kind of come alive when the pads came on. Who is Derek McClendon? He's just like a back end of the roster guy that's kind of been on the team for a little bit. I think he was on the roster like last year, like was like maybe a practice squad guy if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, he's the last outside linebacker on the roster, like Derek McClendon. Let's see if I can find. Yeah, he was on Miami's practice squad last year, late in the season, I believe, and he's been with us. The outside linebacker unit is interesting with Mo, Grayson Murphy, Q Bell, and Cam Good. Do they all make the team? No, I don't think they can't. They can't all make the team, you know? There's just not enough bodies because outside linebacker, so I've kind of looked at the group. You kind of combine the linebackers. I think 4 off-balls make it, which is Brooks, Dodson, Willie Gay, and KJ Britt. I think if they keep more than 4, they're kind of... I don't think they need to. I mean, I think Channing Tindall's time is done, and they keep those 4, and Gay can play a little bit of edge as well. Then at the edge group, you typically keep 5. There's even a world where you only keep 4, and you already have Chop, Chubb, and Phillips. So that's 3 off the rip that are guaranteed. Bell is probably the most likely to make it after that because he was a depth player last year. He saw the most playing time last year, and he has a different skill set. Like he's one of the only edges that can really drop into coverage. So that probably gives him a shot of making the team the best. That's 4. So I think they probably keep 5. So then I think there's only 1 spot for Grayson, Mo, and Cam Good. And I think Cam Good is probably practice squad or cut. Just because he's had some injuries. He's been on the team for a while. I don't think there's the upside's necessarily there with Good. So I think it comes down to Grayson and Kamara. Now they could still get if they cut one of Murphy or Kamara, there's still a world where you can get one of them on the practice squad and they're still on the team. And we know how important practice squad is nowadays, but I think it's pretty unlikely. What would you say the biggest differences are between Meyer and Brewer? I would say Meyer's a good athlete. Brewer's top tier elite athlete at that position. And I think he's also like a better mover of people. Like in the run game, I think Brewer is just like very good for the system. While Meyer, like I think could still fill in and do like a decent job. I just think like he's elevated up there. Plays with a little more like strength too, because like Brewer's got like that wrestling sort of thing to him. Like he's small, but he's like he plays with good leverage, and I think that helps his game. But yeah, I think just Brewer is like just doing things at a higher level. Similar strengths and weaknesses, but Brewer's just like better in those areas. He was saying how Chaney is playing his best football. Who was saying that, Political? Because I don't think I saw that. But either way, like I feel like we haven't heard Tyndall's name mentioned at all from beat reporters, really. Like maybe a couple times, but it's been very rare. And it's just, I think that Tyndall experience, I just don't think you should waste I think there's just more valuable players I would keep on the roster over him. Because like he would be if he made the team, he would be like 53, 52, you know, type of guy on your 53-man roster. I just think there's other guys I would rather keep at other spots that I think would be more valuable to the team, whether it's either from a special teams perspective or just like they could end up playing, or even just like long term, I think they're more valuable to the team. Let's see. So yeah. Teron Armstead, he had said Andrew Meyer is a starting center, and he said he would be in the NFL for 10 years. Yeah, the names Weaver mentioned, he mentioned Storm Duck, Ethan Bonner, Kendall Sheffield come out here and compete every day. They're not going to face better receivers than these guys. Watching those guys in the preseason will be very interesting, especially Bonner. And I want to see Sheffield because I tried to watch, like now that Kendall Sheffield's like seeing playing time, he's kind of getting talked about a little bit. People are saying he's going with the first team, which I don't like, to be honest. I don't think he should be a starter. I watched his film. He only played like 80 snaps last year. In the last 2 years, he's only played like a little over 100 snaps in 2 years. So, and I didn't see very good film from him in those snaps. So I think, you know, I'd rather see guys like, Storm Duck will obviously start over him if that was the case. But like he played a lot of nickel too. Definitely would rather see Mike Hilton in the nickel. I'd rather see some of the safeties play nickel snaps too. I'd rather see Jack Jones, even though, you know, Jack Jones has a little bit of a volatile play style where like it's very risky. I think there's just more upside there. I'd rather even see guys like Bonner too. So we'll see how that plays out. Maybe he has a better year than expected. Maybe this scheme fits him well. But he's someone I will, out of the veterans, Sheffield is someone I will be keeping an eye on in preseason. Because for the most part, I'm watching like in preseason, I really like to watch the, like rookies and second year guys because we get to learn a lot about them. But veterans, not so much, but I will be keeping an eye on him just in case. But yeah. But yeah, I think that's a lot of stuff. Can you make a film breakdown on Kendall Sheffield? Yeah, I thought about it, Political, but I went through and they're just like, there was not a lot of clips to work with. Like, there was literally only like 100 total plays. And most of the plays were just like him not being involved or like, you know, a couple touchdowns given up. Even like I went through his targets, and even the targets that were incompletions, I wouldn't even say were necessarily impressive plays. They were more so like misses by the QBs or the receiver not making a great play. But yeah, I'm not super high on him being running with the ones, to be honest. I don't even know. To me, Sheffield is someone who like it should either be like he's back end of the roster, in my opinion. He's like a one guy that should be like roster bubble. Like he either like barely makes the team or doesn't make it at all. So the fact that he's running with the ones is a little, probably the most concerning. If he's on the field starting, he would be the player I'm most concerned with. Like just from an individual defense perspective, he'd be the one I'm like, oh, he could get exposed. But hey, maybe he's doing a good job in camp. Maybe he feels comfortable. But yeah, I just need to see more snaps out of him. Here's some Storm Duck stuff too. This was Storm Duck. This is where I feel comfortable with Storm Duck. He looks so comfortable in that press man situation. This is what I was talking about. Look at him up top here. Dolphins barely ran press man stuff last year, but they actually asked him to play press man in this Raiders game a decent amount. I think they're going to run more press man this year. Duck looks very comfortable. Look at the patience. Look at him stay square to the line of scrimmage. Patience. Maintain his inside leverage. Eyes are on the hips. see him break, then get hands-on, allow no separation, just beautiful work. He's also a very willing tackler, come downhill, make a play versus screen. Pretty good athlete, can mirror and match people. Even from off, he can break. I'm excited to see Duck in action this season. He also just, obviously has the coolest name on the roster. Yeah. See, I thought Sheffield would be someone that probably wouldn't make the roster either, but if he's running with the ones, that gives him a pretty good shot. Now, to be fair, there has been players in the past. I've seen this happen before, where like there is a player that's running with the ones that you're like, oh, you're probably going to make the team. He's like not someone you thought would run, and then they end up getting cut. So it does not mean he's guaranteed a spot, but it will be interesting to see how it plays out. Like, I don't think it's, I don't feel strongly one way or another at this point. I think preseason will be the sort of tipping point for a lot of those guys. I think in the corner room, that will be big. I think the depth room and the safety spot will be big for these safeties. Like, it'll be like to see who, kind of wins out between like the McMorris, Trader, John Saunders Jr. even as well. Throw him in there because he's had a strong camp. That'll be big for them. The final receiver spot will be big for. I think those are like the main spots going to the preseason. That will be huge. In the edge room, we talked about like the final edge spot as well. Should be pretty interesting to see how it all ends up playing out. But yeah, to review, a lot of typical standouts we've had throughout the days, hitting some deep balls. Like to hear that Malik caught a deep bomb today. Shout out Malik Washington. That's one of my guys. Ewers continues with Theo Weiss. Chop continues to dominate. Couple touchdowns for Jalen Wright. Achane as a receiver. Zach Sieler continuing his success. Shout out Zach. One of the most deserving players of Miami to get an extension. He showed up. He didn't like hold out or anything. Continue to put in that work. And I don't think it's like a bad extension for the team either. Like it's a 3-year extension upon his already existing contract. So like he's here for the next 5 seasons. And he's 29 right now. He turns 30 pretty soon, I'm pretty sure. So like, and I'm pretty sure most of his guaranteed money is on the early end of his contract. So like, you shouldn't see a fall off for a few, even if he has a fall off, it shouldn't be for a few years anyways, because he's another player that started a little bit later in his career because he was a late round pick and he didn't see much playing time early on in his career with the Ravens. Then once he came to Miami, he just got more and more work. A little bit of a late bloomer, but should mean that he's got a little more, legs to his game later on. And I haven't seen any fall off yet, so I'm not concerned, at least for a few seasons. And then if he did have a fall off, it should be like, the guaranteed money would run out. You'd be able to move off of him. But Zach Sieler's one of the guys that I'm hoping retires a Dolphin. We need a trade for a corner. Yeah, but who's willing to trade? I mean, there was a trade for a corner yesterday, which actually would have been a good move for Miami, but I don't know how they would have gotten him. The Raiders traded away a corner that is actually a good player, but he just doesn't fit their system. And they traded, it was a player for player trade. I don't know who the Dolphins would have been able to trade for him. But yeah. But I'm actually not. I think, to me, it's all about the front seven. If the front seven is playing at a high level, as we talked about, if the front four is getting pressure just for who your corners are, doesn't even really matter. In at least in that situation. And I don't think trading for a corner necessarily changes that much unless you trade for a stud. And I don't think they're going to be able to trade for a stud. I just don't see that situation. And I don't think that it's also the best thing for the team long term either. I think they need to be starting to keep their picks. We saw how, losing picks like that can kind of affect your team, and the Dolphins need to go back through building through the draft again. Yeah. Jordan Phillips news. He said Jordan Phillips' power. He said this is what Wakefield said today. Jordan Phillips' power is undeniable. Every few reps, he gets knockback that just really jumps out to you. Did it twice in team today. So seems like every day Phillips is getting some big power reps that are flashing. I think he just probably needs more consistency, but I think that's expected as a 5th round rookie. I am very high on him. Excited to see him throughout the year. Yeah, trading for a corner is much easier said than done, especially at this point. Good morning. Yeah, but just hit me with any questions you got, because I went through pretty much all the notes that I wanted to. Went pretty far in depth. I believe I also saw. Oh, okay. This is what something Armstead said yesterday that I wanted to talk about. Armstead said Keon Smith was getting some guard reps, but when Jackson went down with injury, went out and started taking tackle reps. And he said he thinks Keon Smith is a tackle, which I have been pushing. Like, it's one of the, to me, it's one of the most mind-blowing moves. Like, I know it's not that big of a deal. He's a depth offensive line player, but it's one of the most, moves that I can't make any logical sense of in my mind. Like, there's moves I disagree with, but I can at least make sense of it logically. Like, I'd be like, okay, I can understand why they did that. Keon Smith playing guard makes no sense to me. From his build standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, he is a tackle. His arm length, the way he plays, and then in the reps we've seen, he's been so much better at tackle. Like, in regular season snaps, in preseason, he looked like he belonged as an NFL player at tackle. At guard, he didn't even look like he should be in the NFL playing guard. So the fact that he's even still getting guard snaps kind of concerns me. Like, maybe they're just trying to still work him there, but he's going to be a tackle in an actual game. But man, please work him as a swing tackle with Larry Borom. Like, Larry Borom should be the one getting guard and tackle snaps, not Keon. Keon should not be playing both. I agree with Armstead wholeheartedly that he is a tackle. I don't know why Keon keeps getting any guard snaps. Oh man, lost number one. Yeah, I think if I go to fans, yeah, you all have 75 XP, all the people at the top. So I think I don't know how it decides who has who. I think once you've typed enough, you get to 75 XP, and then that's the highest you can get with just typing. But hey, apparently he's working at tackle now, so hopefully, I don't know. Any John Saunders news? I didn't see anything. I disagree. It goes both ways. You get sacks when you have corners, and you get interceptions when you have a good front seven. I mean, yeah, it can definitely go both ways, but if you have a front four that's getting quick pressure, it doesn't matter. Your corners, as long as they're NFL players, you can easily get by with below average corners. Plus, also, from your point, if we trade for a corner, you still probably have one of the worst corner rooms on paper, even if you had another good one. On paper, your corner room is still going to be considered bad. To me, it all comes down to the front four. No matter what, you're not going to be able to add enough guys to completely turn around your corner room at this spot in the season. And with how the Dolphins have built their team, with how Anthony Weaver runs his system, it is built through the front four getting pressure. Now, there are certain teams and certain systems where, hey, they put more of a reliance on the secondary. But for the Dolphins specifically, this season, this defensive performance this season comes down to the front four and how effective they can be. And also just the front seven, but mostly the front four getting pressure with just four. How effective those guys can be and how Weaver can also get them good looks with their stunts, their games. Not necessarily putting a lot of reliance on the corners because they do a lot of coverage rotation in the back end, more so to just confuse QBs. It's not necessarily about how talented your DBs are in those situations. It's more about just being in the right spot. Excited for the joint practice to see where the depth is. Yeah, excited for the joint practices as well because we will learn a lot from joint practices because since they're in Chicago, that means we'll have to learn through Chicago beat reporters. So I'll have to find the Chicago Bears guys that talk about it. Because that will be interesting to see what they have to say because they'll have more of a bias against Miami because they'll have a bias probably for Chicago. So we'll get to see if there's a positive rep reported by a Bears reporter that for Miami, that means it was, probably pretty accurate because they're not probably going even more against them. But yeah. Look how the Eagles played. They had the best cornerback room with the best front seven. I mean, they had the best corner room because they had the best front seven. They added to their corner room some talent, but I don't think their DB, I think their DB room is good. But I think the reason their DB room is considered the best in the league is because of how good their front seven was. And also, it would be great to have a great corner room. It's just we're not going to have that this season. Now, next year, if we can try to build a great DB room with our already very good front seven, then hell yeah, I'm all for it. It's just we're not at that. We're not in the position to do that. It's too late. They don't have the resources. You're not going to be able to add and make your corner room very much better. It's just how it is right now. So I would rather roll with the young guys and hope one of the young guys plays at a higher level because they're more of an unknown. Well, some of the guys you would add would be like known quantities, but they're more like known quantities to be like average or below average players. But the reason the Eagles won the Super Bowl, go back and watch the Eagles game. They won the Super Bowl because of how quickly they got pressure up front with just 4 people. Not because of how well their secondary played. It was because we saw how Fangio runs his defense. Fangio does not blitz. He brings 4, and the fact that they could get there that quickly on the quarterback with just 4 is the reason they won that game. And having their DBs help, but it was much smaller impact than what their front guys were doing. I know it's early, but what's our wide receiver room look like next year? I would say, obviously Waddle. I think Tyreek I think they move on from Tyreek most likely. Things can change, but I think they most likely move on from Tyreek. I think, Malik. Nick Westbrook-Akini signed a 2-year deal, so he should still be around. I think they probably draft or sign someone that's pretty good out of that room. That would be 4. And then, the back end of the roster will probably be whoever makes it this year out of the, Taj or the UDFAs, whoever makes it this year will be the back end of the roster. And then, they'll probably bring in guys that will fight with them, other UDFAs, late round picks, free agents. But I imagine the room will be Jalen Waddle and then some other good player they bring in, either a free agent or someone they draft early. And then Waddle and Nick Westbrook-Akini should still be around to be your third, fourth. And how much they rotate their D-line to keep them fresh proof. Yeah. They had a very deep front as well, yeah. They were able to get their third and fourth edges were getting multiple sacks in those games. And they were quick sacks. That's the difference. If you have if you're getting a lot of sacks, but they're later sacks, they're not quick sacks, then yeah, that's probably a sign that your secondary is very good. But if you're getting quick sacks, it probably doesn't even matter who your secondary is. Because I think most NFL players can cover for 2 seconds. Trade for Joshua Williams. If that was on the table, maybe. I've seen that reported, but we don't even know. But even then, if they trade for Joshua Williams, their corner room would still be the worst in the league on paper. It's not like Joshua Williams changes the outlook of the corner room. To me, it just comes down to be they could be maybe a little more effective, but it still comes down to the front 4 no matter what. Ruggs. I doubt they bring in Ruggs. Sounds like Bonner was a little pissed the other day. What, in his interview? I don't know. Yeah, I think the corner room is also it's a room that you're looking for. You're looking for guys to stand out. So because next year it's probably gonna be an overhaul. You're trying to find the guys that can be here long term. I don't think Dolphins move off as Tyreek as easily as we think. Tyreek is an elite player. I don't know. I think they're praying to move off Tyreek, but they just can't this year. That's my opinion. He is still an elite player. Don't get me wrong, but I think they're done with him. And I think they also have moved off some other people that would be still considered. They moved off a lot of big name players this year. Jalen Ramsey would be one. I think they would like to move off Tyreek, and next year makes more sense from a cap standpoint for them. And I feel like they would feel more comfortable doing it, but who knows? I don't think it's a guarantee, but I think it's if I had to bet money, I would bet money on him being not here next season. No to Ruggs, guys. Yeah, no to Ruggs. Right, what about king of the almost sack in NFL? Players who get close but can't just get there fast enough, or they whiff on the sack? I think quick pressures are more valuable to the team than I think it's a better showing of how good a player is. Even if they don't finish a sack, quick pressures is usually a better sign of like showing how important and how good a player is playing than like a sack that might be like, after 3.5 seconds, 4 seconds. But, that's a different conversation. Like, it's the Myles Garrett versus TJ Watt conversation. Myles Garrett gets a lot of quick pressures and he'll get quick sacks too, but like he wins fast and he wins dominant. TJ Watt doesn't necessarily do that anymore. He has some reps like that, but for the most part, a lot of his sacks come late in plays and they come from like hustle and like then he'll like, to me, it's less impressive than, the Myles Garrett sacks. Almost time to scheme against Anthony Richardson, yeah. Or Daniel Jones. We'll see what ends up being. Cleveland signed Snoop, QB6. Why don't we re-sign Kendall Fuller? I don't know. I mean, no one signed him, so maybe I think they're probably worried about the injury stuff. And just based on what Fuller didn't really play that well last season. Like if you compare like how Fuller and Storm Duck played, I feel like they're just like, we'd rather roll with Storm Duck because he doesn't have that injury history that you have, and they see more upside with Duck. And I also think they're going to try to run more press man-to-man, and that's where Fuller's at his weakest, is press man-to-man. So I think that's probably why they haven't brought back Fuller. And I don't know what his price point is looking like. Yeah, we'll see what ends up. If it ends up being Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson. Hot take. I said this, I think I said this probably over a week ago, but hot take. I think Daniel Jones is the better NFL quarterback. I mean, I think they're both not good, by the way. I don't think either are that good. And I think Daniel Jones is probably the better NFL quarterback. I think I would rather, for Miami, I think I would rather face Daniel Jones. We've played both. Both did not play well against Miami, but the Dolphins have, like, the Dolphins' way of winning is getting quick pressure. Daniel Jones struggles so much under pressure. He has horrible pocket awareness, and you can take over games versus Daniel Jones just by getting quick pressure, and you can force turnovers. Anthony Richardson is probably at his best beating pressure because he's so athletic and strong. We saw last year how, like, we had, like, some free sacks on him and just never got him to the ground. That's how I could see them losing that game, is like not being able to get sacks on Anthony Richardson, even though he's not a good passer. I think the Dolphins are going to be better versus more athletic guys this year, just based on like some of the guys they've added to the team. But I actually think Daniel Jones versus Miami specifically is a more ideal matchup. I remember when we played the Giants, the Dolphins even hurt Daniel Jones in that game because they were hitting him a lot. Resign Jordan Poyer? Okay, political. Now we're trolling. If there's one player I would never resign in Miami, it might be Jordan Poyer. Oh, man. Let me see about you guys. Okay, question. Silly question. Anyone on the Fins that you would trade? That another team needs that position? Line teams to be really thin at pass rush. Would Chubb be one to move? I don't think I would trade... I think the Dolphins traded away all the players that I would have traded. Like, I was down to trade Ramsey for sure. I was open to trading Jonnu because I think it made sense, just based on what they were trying to do. I mean, if you get a great offer on someone, I think you should always listen. But I don't think there's anyone I would be trying to shop. I think we've talked about how important this... I think you want to keep all three edges because we've had some injuries there, and I think you want to, you need those bodies to be effective. So I don't think I would trade Chubb or Phillips unless the offer blew me away, which I don't think teams would offer a lot because of, they're coming off the injuries. So no. I could trade like a back end of the roster guy. Like, remember when someone said like, remember when like Greer said like teams offered a draft pick for Ethan Bonner? Like, if you were going to cut Ethan Bonner, like, because, he's someone who might make the roster, might not. He could even start potentially. I mean, I could be talked into trading someone like that because I think there's a world where like they don't even play Ethan Bonner. So like if you get a draft pick out of it, even though I do like Ethan Bonner and he's someone I would like to see play in that corner room at some point. Like, I think I would take like a late draft pick for some of these back in the roster guys. Probably the best thing for the future of the team. Which other edges do you think makes the 53 and then makes the practice squad? Who gets released as cut? I think McClendon probably gets cut. I know he's had some strong days, but he's just the guy that I think is easiest to get on the practice squad if they really wanted to keep him around. To me, Murphy versus Kamara is interesting because Kamara was a 5th round pick. Murphy's been outperforming him, but I really like Murphy. And I just see a world in preseason where I think Murphy has the better chance of standing out. And, maybe I think Kamara probably has the likelihood of getting claimed the most, but I do think there's still a decent chance to get him on the practice squad. So I would guess Murphy and then Kamara on the practice squad right now, but a lot can change in preseason. On the Colts defense, do we need to scheme around Buckner? I can check the Colts roster. Let me look. Colts depth chart. Let's check out their defense. Because offensively, they have some good players. Tyler Warren, my guy Tyler Warren, he's had actually a pretty strong camp from what I'm aware of. They actually have a pretty good O-line. They have some good players on the O-line. I think there's some guys you can take advantage of. I think they have some good weapons as receivers. And they have a good running back. You basically beat their offense by what we've talked about, getting after the quarterback. Which is obviously where you don't want to be weakest. Now let's look at their defense. Some decent players here. Yeah. If Buckner, I didn't watch how Buckner was last year, but if Buckner is still playing to that level, yeah, he's the guy you got to watch out for up front. They do have Latu going into his second year. We'll see if he takes that jump. But I think, maybe scheming around Buckner makes the most sense. Their linebacker play is whatever. They have some decent DBs. They got Travaris Ward on the outside they added. He's a physical press man corner. Maybe that means they'll leave him one-on-one. They've done that in the past. I've seen when Ward was on the Niners, they left Ward on Tyreek and Waddle sometimes one-on-one. And, if that's the case, you can take advantage. They added Bynum in free agency, who's a pretty good safety. Kenny Moore's a good nickel. He's someone to watch out for. Justin Wally's a rookie, and it looks like Wally's listed as a starter for them. He's someone that I liked in the draft. That's, so I would say their defense doesn't have a lot of, big names. They have some people I like, but it doesn't look like they have a ton of elite talent out there. I think as long as you can find a way to run the ball, you should be able to find success against that defense. Straight up trade Reed for Terry. Yeah, I just don't see that happening. I've seen the reports about it, but those are all the fake the accounts that are just push out the fake reports. Maybe I never get the notifications. Yeah, do you guys have the notification bell for my channel turned on? Because does it just not work? Because I know YouTube is just stupid. Yeah, if you guys have it turned on, let me know if it works or doesn't work for you guys usually. Because that is interesting. Because I've never turned on actual notifications for a YouTube channel before, so I don't know how it is, but I have heard other channels talk about how it just doesn't work sometimes. Which is weird. Wish we could bring back X to play safety. I mean, I don't know if he could play safety. To me, for most DBs that are out there, I think I would rather just roll with the young guys at this point. I just don't see many options out there that are great. You saw one today when I went live? That's weird. That's weird as hell. YouTube's just broken. I don't know what to do. Let me go to my YouTube real quick. I mean, I've never changed anything. See, even my notifications that I receive for comments and stuff isn't popping up. I have to manually go to find it. So notifications are kind of broken for me right now, and I've never had that happen before. My actual notifications, because I usually get a notification when I get comments and stuff. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a YouTube issue. They also have a problem with tight ends who's covering Tyler Warren week 1. Well, I actually think they're in a better position to stop tight ends this year. Because I think Melifonwu is a player that helps stop tight ends. I think Minka is someone who's had experience, helping with tight ends. They even have better linebackers to cover tight ends, like just guys who can spot drop versus zone. Because a lot of times when you're going versus tight ends, a lot of their production comes versus zone, not like true man-to-man one-on-one stuff. But like, Tyrell Dodson's a pretty good zone cover guy. Willie Gay can make some plays in coverage. Yeah, I think your safeties are better suited for tight end coverage this year. I do think Warren will be an issue. Warren's a good player, and I've seen him make some plays. And it seems like him and Daniel Jones have a connection. So if it is Daniel Jones, Tyler Warren's a player to watch out for. Josh Downs, do not sleep on Josh Downs. Week 1, Josh Downs is very good. The Colts slot receiver. He is very good. They also have Michael Pittman. Shout out Michael Pittman. I played against him in high school. I actually played against him a couple of different times. I had to guard him a few different times. But yeah, shout out Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman Jr. I played against him and his brother. Yeah. Yeah. Weird that the notifications work for some of you, but not the others. You get a notification like 5 hours later. Yeah, okay. I mean, I guess I'm just like typically on a schedule. So like for live stream, my schedule is a little more up and down. My YouTube post, if I am posting that day, I usually post at like noon Eastern. I mean, that's usually when you'll see stuff. I think after the preseason, the film breakdowns might be out at like different times, like because I don't know when the film will be out exactly, so it might take a little bit longer. It could be even quicker than that. But I will get out the film breakdowns as quick as possible, like the day after. But like after that fact, they should be out on noon Eastern. So like my videos mostly noon Eastern for the most part. Sometimes a little earlier, a little bit later, like that first day in the week, because I don't know when the film always comes out. And if you're a member, like it's just random members. I mean, I just post it as soon as I make it. But yeah, going live. I've been going live at like for these like training camp practices. I've been going live at like 11 Eastern, 11:15 Eastern. So because that's like right after, and that's when I'm kind of available right now. But yeah, that's weird. Who won? What position did you play? I played, when I played against Pittman, I played safety. I played corner most of my life, but I got senior year, they moved me to safety. And I got to guard him like man to man, probably like 3 snaps. And so I guard him like man to man 3 snaps. They surprisingly only targeted him once because you have to understand, Pittman was he was like the 34th overall pick. So he was like a very early second. Like he was almost picked in the first round. And you have to understand, in high school, I was like 5'9", 150, guarding Michael Pittman, who was probably, over 6 foot, had, many pounds on me. He only had 1 catch for 9 yards in the 3 reps we went against each other. And I tackled him right away when he got caught it at 9 yards. Now, he did score 2 touchdowns against us, but they weren't against me. That's all I'm saying. I'm surprised they didn't target me, though, like based on like just like the QB would see that and like go after me. But I was always better than people thought. Better than they would think. Just based on like looking at me. Oh, okay. Ryder the obvious. I think I will love this linebacker core, especially when it comes to QBs who like scramble. Yeah, I think Jordan Brooks, absolute stud. I think Dotson. I have confidence in Dotson in games where like, because really the only game Dotson played really bad last season was the Packers game. I think he will struggle versus more complicated like run first teams. The Packers are a run first team and they do a very good job with misdirection and like their run concepts. That's where Dotson can take advantage of. But he's a pretty good corner, or he's pretty good like a dropper in coverage. He got multiple interceptions. He's not a bad player, like versus the run, like versus more basic stuff. And then, I think KJ Britt's actually a really solid run defender if he has to play. And then I like Willie Gay with the value he can play as like a blitzer, allow him to get downhill. I think Willie Gay brings value there. And he helps out a lot, I think, versus potential athletic quarterbacks. You're white. Oh yeah, I mean that is another reason. To be fair, in high school, I don't know if it's as big of a deal. Like, yeah, there's no white corners in the in the NFL. Uh, Ryan Shazier was the best player from my school. Yeah, from my school, we've had a few like because I went to I grew up in California, so and there's a lot of football talent in California. I played in a pretty good division. Like my high school had I didn't play at the same time as some of these guys. Some of them I did, but Dennis Pitta, I don't remember if you guys remember him. He was the Ravens tight end, Super Bowl winner, was very good for many years. He went to the same high school. Drake London, for the Falcons receiver right now, he went to the same high school that I did, and he was like what, the 10th overall pick or something. So that was, some good players. Some other guys, most of the other guys were like there's some other players, but they weren't like super high level players, but they played in the NFL, were at least like, made some rosters. I played against a lot of people that were in the NFL, or, there's a lot. The people in our division, there was a lot of people who went to the NFL or were like high end college players. Andrew Meyer punched me in the throat when we played him in high school. Wait, really? That's so funny. Do you just like, you kind of like low key hate Andrew Meyer on the Dolphins? Oh man, can you pull up a picture of me in high school? I wonder if I could find one. I actually could probably find a picture of me in like a football picture. Nope, nope, nope. I don't think so. There used to be one I could find of me, like, there's like a picture. Damn, it's not on Google anymore. Unfortunate. I wonder if I search up. That might be what it was. No, I don't see any right now. I swear to one, there used to be one I could find on Google. And it was like a picture from like one of those like newspaper articles. There is one that I could find my name and like, because I made first team all league. It's in like the first team all league article. Interesting. Okay. You play in college? No. The college I went to didn't even have a football team, and I kind of just like fell out of love with playing. I mean, I wouldn't have played D1, but I could have played at some level in college. But also, like, one of my high school coaches made me fall out of love with playing. Like, our safety coach, whew, that guy was out of his damn mind. Okay, so do you still respect Jason Taylor? You playing? Weaver said when he calls Minka covers Hill. You think we'll see him covering ones during the season? Minka, like number one receivers? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens, but I don't think it will be a yeah, I don't think it will be something common. Nice. LOL, no, I deserved. I was bull rushed on a kick and he was trying to block me. Oh, nice. Yeah. None of the players that I've played against ever ended up on the Dolphins, I don't think. So I'm trying to think of the other NFL players I played against. Darnay Holmes, he was like a Giants corner for a while. I played against him a couple of times. Who else? Or there was I played in this one guy, like passing league. You remember Trent Irwin, the Bengals receiver? He was like a Bengals receiver for many years. I think he recently left the team. But he was always like the third or fourth Bengals receiver. He was always the fourth Bengals receiver behind Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. I played against that guy in passing league. That guy was insane in high school. He was so good. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. like I'm missing something. But yeah, that's probably it for today. Appreciate you guys for watching. Probably will stream tomorrow because I think training camp tomorrow is open to fans and stuff, so we'll get more news. I don't know if there's training camp Thursday. Do you guys know if there's training camp Thursday? Because I know Friday is joint practice. Is Thursday anything? I couldn't find any information about it. Maybe they're off. Maybe that's when they're traveling to Chicago is Thursday. I don't know. So Thursday I might just post a video if there's no training camp. I have that. I made one already this week. I could just post that. Okay, but yeah. Thank you guys for watching. I will see